In the second year of my relationship with Steven, the rich heir, I was still kept in the shadows. At the grand banquet in City A, I was the singer performing on stage. He, meanwhile, was the honored guest surrounded by admiration in the VIP seats. Whenever his mother mentioned me, it was always the same line. Just a lounge singer. Steven knows his boundaries. When he got engaged to the daughter of a longtime family friend, someone asked how they planned to deal with me. Steven gave a lazy smile and said, "One's in City A, the other's in a remote City C. It's not like I can't afford to keep her." Later, at the awards ceremony, when I received the Best Actress trophy, I announced my temporary withdrawal from the entertainment industry. The host was shocked and asked why. I smiled, gently placing a hand on my slightly rounded belly. "I'm in early pregnancy. My husband doesn't feel comfortable with me continuing to work right now." In the audience, always aloof and self-possessed, Steven suddenly rose to his feet, eyes flushing red in an instant. Chapter 1. Steven sat in the front row center seat of the VIP section, and I was on stage, wearing striking makeup and a thin, elegant dress, with seductive eyes and swaying hips. I performed a classic movie song from 20 years ago. When the song ended, the applause came. Steven clapped perfunctorily, then stood up and left. Behind him, a dozen assistants and bodyguards followed in a flurry. Half the room emptied in seconds. On my way back to the dressing room, I received a message from him. "Waiting for you in the car." I stared at the message, my smile strained and bitter. It was the second year of our relationship, and I was still hidden away. Whenever his mother had tea with others, she'd speak of me in her usual gentle yet detached tone. "Just a lounge singer. Steven knows what he's doing." And he certainly did. Only a few of his closest friends even knew I was his girlfriend. In public events like this, the gap between us was a chasm. He didn't even spare me a glance. Chapter 2. For Steven's birthday, I took special leave from the filming crew. He was staying at a hotel on the Sheko Peninsula during those few days. When I arrived with my gift, the top floor suite was already buzzing with people. "Steven, are you really going to get engaged to the Song family's second daughter? Even the crown prince can't escape a political marriage." "Huh? But Steven, what about Susie? You're really into her, aren't you? If you're getting engaged, are you still going to keep her, or cut her off?" Steven let out a soft chuckle. "Is that even a problem? So you've made up your mind?" He lit a cigarette, smiling lazily. "One's in City A, the other's way off in City C. It's not like I can't afford to support her." I stood outside the door. Though it was the peak of summer, it felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. I was trembling violently. I pushed the door open. The voices gradually fell silent. Steven's fingers holding the cigarette paused midair. I tossed the gift box on the floor and turned to leave. Steven quickly came after me. "Susie." I didn't want to say anything to him and strode toward the elevator. But just as the elevator doors opened, he grabbed me. I kept my head down and shook his hand off hard. Steven grabbed me again, his gaze still calm and confident. "Susie, be good. Don't make a scene. Let's break up." "What did you say?" I said, "Let's break up." "Steven." I finally looked up at him. In truth, the moment I first heard his mother talk about me like that, the thought had already taken root. And now, after hearing him say it with his own mouth, I knew Steven and I were truly over. "Baby, you know I don't even like the song girl," he said in a soft voice, trying to coax me. "You've always wanted to work with director Gene, right? I can get you the female lead in his next film." Steven had never used his connections to get me anything before. He said it would invite speculation about our relationship. But now, was he trying to buy me off as a kept woman in exchange for a lead role? I couldn't help but laugh and pushed him away. "Steven, congratulations on your engagement, sincerely. And let's never see each other again." "Susie, are you really going to piss me off?" I stepped into the elevator without looking back. Chapter 3. After the breakup, my entire career in City A came to a standstill. At the same time, Steven began publicly promoting a rising starlet, Zara. All the resources I lost fell neatly into her lap. Even the opportunity one had once dreamed of, to work with director Gene, was handed to her effortlessly. At a dinner banquet, I watched Steven appear, proudly escorting Zara with a smug look on her face. The moment our eyes met, I was surprised to find that my heart had become completely still. I put down my glass and turned to leave, but Steven blocked my way. Do you want to come back now? Miss Zhong is young and beautiful. You have good taste, I replied. Steven frowned slightly. Baby, don't keep provoking me again and again. I looked at him calmly. I'm planning to return to City C. I'll start over from scratch. It's not like I'll starve. Steven let out a mocking laugh. You think going back to City C means you get a fresh start? You think anyone in this industry dares to hire you without my say-so? My contract with the agency hadn't ended yet. If I wanted to go back to City C, I could. But the penalty fee for terminating the contract was 30 million yuan, so I had no choice but to stay in City A. At yet another banquet, my manager led me over to offer toasts. Behind Zara stood a whole entourage of bodyguards and assistants. She stood next to Director Jean, looking proud and content. When she saw me, she whispered something to the director. Immediately, the way Director Jean looked at me changed. Moments later, someone brought over a bottle of liquor. Susie, finish this bottle and the supporting female role in Director Jin's film is yours. I stared at the bottle, then glanced at Director Jean. Sometimes, prejudice doesn't need to be explained. You just do it, and do it well, and it shatters on its own. I reached out and took the bottle. By the third glass, the banquet hall suddenly fell silent. I set down my glass and looked toward the center of the crowd. A tall man in a black business suit was striding into the banquet hall, surrounded by people as if he were royalty. What surprised me even more was that Steven followed closely behind him, wearing an expression of deference I had never seen before, respectful and even cautious. At some point, Zara had appeared behind me. You know who that is? I turned around. Zara smiled mysteriously. Steven's uncle, the international heir of Pinnacle Group, the man who practically controls half the financial world in Asia. That guy is the real untouchable figure in City A. Susie, if you managed to latch on to him, you could rule the entertainment industry. There was temptation in her tone. I knew she meant no good. But still, slightly drunk, I found myself gazing at the man in the center, Theodore. The man's face was handsome and solemn, emotion unreadable. But his aura was so powerful it was almost oppressive. Perhaps I had stared too long, because suddenly his gaze fell directly on me. My reaction was dulled from the alcohol, and I held his eyes for a full 2 seconds before hastily looking away. My head was spinning worse than before. I got up and went to the bathroom. As the alcohol hit me harder, I vomited in discomfort. By the time I cleaned up and stepped out, I stumbled into an unexpected scene. The renowned triple award-winning actress Diana had red-rimmed eyes, holding a business card awkwardly in midair. Theodore looked at her coldly, with absolutely no warmth in his expression. He made no move to accept the card. Diana left, wiping away tears. That was when Theodore saw me, and for reasons I couldn't explain. I instinctively reached into my purse, pulled out my own card, and handed it to him. Mr. Ning, I'm Susie from Starlight Entertainment. Chapter 4. Theodore's gaze slowly dropped from my face to the card in my hand. Then, he raised an eyebrow and curled his lips with amused interest. I followed his gaze, and only then did I realize, far too late, that what I'd handed him wasn't a business card. It was the key card for the hotel room the event organizers had given me. Embarrassed, I quickly tried to snatch it back. But Theodore reached out and took the card anyway. His long fingers held it as his eyes returned to my face, that faint smile still lingering on his lips. Miss Susie, I'll see you later. I watched, dumbfounded, as Theodore pocketed the card and turned to leave. Flustered, I rushed forward to explain. Mr. Ning, but the assistant following behind him blocked me gently, smiling politely. Miss Susie, please come with me. I felt the need to explain the situation clearly, so I obediently followed his assistant into the elevator, the presidential suite on the top floor of the Intercontinental Hotel, exclusively reserved for Theodore. By the time the alcohol in my system had subsided a bit, the door opened and Theodore walked in. Several of his assistants followed behind, carrying boxes and laptops. At the very end, looking like a well-behaved quail, was my agent, pushing my suitcase along. Sandra? I stood up in shock. Susie, all your things are here. I'll leave now. Call me if you need anything. Sandra said, dropping the suitcase, shooting me a few exaggerated glances, and slipping away. The assistants finished organizing and exited one by one. Only Theodore and I were left in the room. The embarrassment was so intense I wanted to crawl into a hole. Mr. Ning, that earlier situation was a misunderstanding. He smelled faintly of wine. He loosened his tie and sat down on the sofa. Misunderstanding? He set his tie aside casually and looked up at me. Then, Miss Susie, tell me, what did it mean? Handing me your room key? My face flushed crimson as I hurried to explain. I meant to give you my business card. I grabbed the wrong one by mistake. Theodore chuckled lightly. And what did the business card mean? Then? I hoped to introduce myself to you. If you ever invest in films or series, maybe you could consider me. My voice trailed off as I spoke, my shoulders sinking in defeat. So many people wanted to cling to someone like him. Why would he help me? I'm sorry, that was presumptuous of me. I sniffled and bowed deeply. Mr. Ning, sorry to disturb you. I'll leave now. Miss Susie, just as I turned to go, Theodore stopped me. Did I say no? Mr. Ning? I blinked, surprised. So, you'd consider it? Theodore nodded slightly. I bit my lip and, summoning my courage, asked, would you consider it, without requiring an unspoken deal? His features relaxed, and he smiled lazily. No unspoken rules, but I do have another condition. What condition? I instantly became cautious. I need a wife. Theodore's gaze locked onto mine, his deep voice magnetic. Miss Susie, are you interested? I froze on the spot. Zara had said Theodore was the international heir to Pinnacle Group, the most unreachable high branch in all of City A. Someone like him, how could he possibly need a wife? Countless wealthy heiresses were dying to marry him. I didn't believe in free lunches falling from the sky, especially not when he was Stephen's uncle. The thought set off alarms in my head. Mr. Ning, I was once Stephen's girlfriend. You've probably heard. Theodore shifted his posture, draping one arm casually over the sofa armrest. I know, you do? And you're still making this proposal. I was growing more and more confused. Stephen's mother had always looked down on me, and she was Theodore's sister. No matter how I looked at it, this didn't make sense. Is that important? Isn't it? I was stunned. You're Stephen's uncle, and Mrs. Lin's brother. She never liked me. Miss Susie, Theodore said calmly. Mrs. Lin is an adopted daughter of the Ning family. She's not my biological sister. Besides, whether she likes you or not has nothing to do with you being my wife. I just didn't want to cause you trouble. After all, if your nephew's ex-girlfriend becomes your wife, who knows what people would say behind your back? Miss Susie, I don't think anyone in City A dares to gossip about my personal affairs. Theodore said it plainly, but then gave a helpless shake of his head. Though I must admit, your repeated excuses tonight are starting to make me look bad. That's not what I meant. Then are you saying yes? Can I think about it? Theodore checked his watch and stood up. Miss Susie, you may stay here tonight and think it over. Give me your answer in the morning. There are 4 bedrooms. Choose whichever one you like. And you, tonight. I'll be staying here too. Seeing my eyes go wide in alarm, Theodore chuckled. Relax. Miss Susie, until you agree to be my wife, I will observe all the proper rules of a gentleman. Chapter 5. I originally thought I wouldn't be able to sleep a wink that night, but unexpectedly, once I washed up and lay down, I fell asleep as soon as I closed my eyes. Maybe it was the alcohol. I slept deeply, dreamlessly. When I opened my eyes the next morning, my mind gradually cleared. Everything from last night's conversation with Theodore remained vivid. Lying in bed, I was still thinking about how I should respond. Just then, my phone suddenly vibrated. I picked it up. It was Stephen calling. I hesitated for a moment, but still pressed answer. Where are you? Is there something you need, Mr. Lin? I heard from Zara that you stopped my uncle in the hallway last night. Stephen sneered through the phone. Susie, desperation doesn't mean you should start grasping at straws. You can't even get through the Lin family's doors. And you think the Ning family would open theirs to you? I gripped the phone tighter and tighter, my fingertips turning pale. That casual humiliation, that ingrained sense of superiority, it felt like a blade straight to the heart, draining every drop of blood from my body. I sat up slowly, the world spinning in black and white before my eyes. All right, baby, I know you've had a rough time lately. Steven's tone turned soft. Propping up Zara was just me acting out. You know it's you I care about. Marriage alliances are common in wealthy families. But I promise, once she gives birth, I won't touch her again for the rest of my life. There'll only be you, Steven. My voice was hoarse. In that moment, I couldn't even remember the last time I'd said his name in full. This ends here. I don't want to ruin the beautiful beginning we once had. And please, don't make me regret ever loving a man who turned out to be this awful, this low. There was silence on the other end for a long time. Susie, I've never lowered myself like this for any other woman. Why can't you understand that I don't have a choice? This is your last chance. Susie, I've already made my decision. Steven, Susie, think it through. If you regret this later, there won't be a way back. I've thought it through. Fine. Steven said nothing more and hung up. By the time I'd finished washing up and changed into fresh clothes, it was almost 9. Theodore wasn't in the living room. His study door was slightly ajar, and I could vaguely hear voices inside. I didn't want to interrupt, so I went to the dining area for breakfast. By the time I finished eating, Theodore had wrapped up his business as well. He was dressed in a smoky gray shirt and black trousers. Since he was indoors, he didn't wear a tie, and the top 2 buttons were undone. He looked effortlessly relaxed. Good morning, Mr. Ning. I stood and greeted him. Good morning, Miss Susie. He gestured toward the sofa. Let's sit and talk. I sat across from him, still a little uneasy. Relax. Theodore looked up at me. No matter what, I won't make things hard for you. There's no need to be nervous. Mr. Ning, I have a few questions. Go ahead. If I agree to marry you, would it be possible to keep the marriage private for now? He raised a brow. Why? Because I love acting and singing, even after getting married. I'd like to keep working. Theodore nodded. I see, you don't want others to favor you just because you're Mrs. Ning. You want to avoid people giving you a free pass, right? Yes, it might sound silly, but I want to prove myself. That's not silly at all, Miss Susie. In fact, your mindset confirms I didn't misjudge you. So, you agree? Of course, Mr. Ning. To be honest, I was surprised. Many traditional families in city still disapprove of their women working in the public eye, especially in the entertainment industry. I hadn't expected Theodore to agree so easily. Any other questions? One more. I bit my lip and finally mustered the courage to ask. You said you needed a wife. I won't pry into the reasons, but I assume this is a temporary arrangement, something like a contract marriage. So, Mr. Ning, I'd like to know, how long do you intend this contract to last? As soon as I finished speaking, I noticed Theodore's brows crease slightly. Mr. Ning, I'm sorry. That was presumptuous of me. Theodore raised one elegant finger and pressed it against his temple, then sighed softly, just like he did last night. A little helpless. Miss Susie, this is not a temporary arrangement, and this is not a contract marriage. His expression turned serious, his tone solemn. A marriage has no expiration date. But if you insist on knowing the answer, there's only one. What is it? Until the day I draw my last breath. Chapter 6. Throughout the entire marriage registration process, I felt like I was drunk. My mind was foggy and blank. Even when taking our photo, no matter how I smiled, it looked stiff and awkward, almost silly. But Theodore looked outrageously handsome. The entertainment industry is never short on good-looking people. Over the years, I'd seen so many attractive men that I'd long since become immune. Yet when I looked at Theodore's face on that certificate, I couldn't help but feel a girlish flutter in my heart. Stop staring, Theodore said as he reached over and took both certificates, carefully putting them away. He naturally took my hand. The real deal is right here. You can look all you want from now on. The moment he held my hand, my heart skipped a beat. my face turning red. I gave a tiny, instinctive tug, but Theodore just held on tighter. Let's go home. I immediately tensed up. Are we meeting your parents? They're still vacationing abroad. We'll see them when they return. I let out a huge sigh of relief. Clear your schedule in the coming days. We're going to take a trip to City C. To do what? To visit my in-laws. Theodore pulled me gently into his arms, pressing a gentlemanly kiss to my forehead. After all, I married their precious daughter without asking. I need to go apologize properly. Mr. Ning, I couldn't help but feel moved. No matter what his reasons were for marrying me. No matter what goals lay behind it all. At least, so far, everything he had done never made me feel uncomfortable. He had respected my wishes from the very beginning. In nearly 2 years of dating Steven, my parents had always wanted to meet him. But every time, Steven would come up with an excuse to refuse. Even last year, when my parents came to City A to visit, Steven never showed up. Sure, his assistants and secretaries arranged everything meticulously, but I could feel my parents' disappointment. Still, they pretended to be happy the entire time, not wanting me to feel bad. Tears suddenly welled up and slipped down my cheeks. Theodore didn't say anything. He just gently wrapped me in his arms. He smelled wonderful, a mix of tobacco and sandalwood. Calm and comforting. In that moment, I couldn't help but think, maybe agreeing to marry Theodore wasn't some foolish impulse. Maybe it was the smartest decision I'd made in years. All my luggage and personal belongings had already been moved into Theodore's mansion by his staff. Decorate however you like. If there's anything you want to add, feel free, Theodore said as he took me upstairs. The master suite occupied the entire 3rd floor. There was a private lounge, a study, a media room, a massive, luxurious walk-in closet, and 2 bathrooms. All my clothes had been carefully cleaned, steamed, and hung up by the maids. The built-in bag display along the entire wall was filled with limited edition handbags from luxury brands, including around 20 Hermes Birkin bags, each worth at least $1,000,000 yuan. I wasn't sure what styles you liked, so I picked out a few that I thought would suit you. If you don't like them, I'll take you shopping again. I love them all. Really, there's no need to buy so many. Mr. Ning, I was dazed, even when Steven had been chasing me with everything he had. He never showered me with such extravagant gifts. Women naturally love jewelry, designer clothes, and handbags. No one could be truly indifferent when faced with all this, and I wasn't the exception. Theodore gently brushed a hand through my hair. Go change into something nice. Let's go out for dinner tonight. I think I'll remember that night for the rest of my life. Aboard a private cruise on Victoria Harbor. Fireworks lit up the sky all night. In the vast dining room, there were only the 2 of us. The exquisite food and wine were intoxicating, but it was the soft spring breeze that skimmed the sea that stirred up ripples in my heart. It was, in a way, our wedding night. But Theodore didn't touch me. The enormous 3rd floor suite had 2 bedrooms. We each took one. He gave me a gentle goodnight kiss, then turned and left. He softly closed the door behind him. I lay in bed, surrounded by faint, shifting shadows and lights, and I found myself thinking, how does a man like Theodore know how to love someone like this? Who taught him? Could it be, like in those romantic novels, that he, too, had a moonlight he could never forget? A red rose he could never let go? But then again, what does any of that have to do with me? We'd only known each other for a few days. How much space could I possibly occupy in his heart? Chapter 7. Theodore leveraged Pinnacle Group's top-tier legal team to help me terminate my contract with Starlight Entertainment. But I didn't follow his suggestion to join one of the companies under his name. Instead, I chose to start my own independent studio with Sandra. There were 2 reasons. First, I didn't want people to think I was getting special treatment just because I had Theodore backing me. Second, in case there came a day when we went our separate ways, at least my career wouldn't be entangled with his. While Sandra handled the studio's setup, I jumped straight into auditions. Meanwhile, Zara had used her connection with Steven to secure the second female lead in director Jin's new film. She was already in script readings with the cast. There was also a villainous supporting female role in the new movie, complex and highly dramatic. Director Jin had been struggling to find the right fit. so I signed up for the audition. Director Gene didn't have a good impression of me. The moment I walked into the room, he frowned. Still, he gave me a chance. Midway through the performance, Director Gene, who had been lazily slouched back in his chair, suddenly sat up straight. His expression turned serious, focused. By the time I finished, I had landed the role. On the first day of the table read, Zara looked at me with blatant disdain. After all, she was the second female lead, and my role technically counted as the fourth. But no one expected what came next. Director Gene asked the screenwriters to revise the script. Zara's scenes were reduced, while my character's scenes were expanded by dozens. Zara's face turned dark on the spot. The very next day, Steven showed up on set. At the time, I was rigged to a wire harness, already suspended several stories above ground for a stunt scene. Steven barged in and ordered a stop to the shoot. Zara was crying dramatically, and Director Gene, having a temper of his own, refused to back down. The atmosphere quickly turned tense, and there I was, still hanging midair, as if everyone had forgotten about me. Director Gene, I only have one condition today, Steven said. If Zara stays, then Susie goes. Susie passed the audition. She's talented and fits the role. I won't replace her. Then shut the production down. Filming resumes only when Susie is gone. The cost of halting a film set for even one day is astronomical. Steven was clearly trying to strong-arm Director Gene into giving in. He took a few steps, then suddenly turned back, his eyes lifting to where I hung above. Director Gene, how about this? He said. Let's meet halfway. If Susie can hold the wire harness for the entire day, then let's put this to rest. Whatever you shoot or rewrite afterward, I'll stay out of it. Deal? That's insane. Even our professional stunt team couldn't last that long on wires. Then there's nothing to talk about. Steven's smile was icy. Director Gene, why don't you ask Susie? Maybe she'll agree. The director's voice came through my earpiece. I listened, word by word, and surprisingly, my heart didn't even flinch. Steven knew I had a slight fear of heights. In short scenes, I could usually grit my teeth and power through, but to stay rigged up there for an entire day? Steven knew full well it was nearly impossible for me, but this conflict had started because of me, and truthfully, I really loved this role. I truly wanted to work with Director Gene. I agree, Susie. It's okay, Director, I said. The show must go on. That was the first thing they taught us on our first day at film school. There are hundreds of people on the set. I can't be the reason they all stop working. Susie, I was prejudiced against you before, but you're a real actress and a good woman. Chapter 8. By the third hour, I was already feeling seriously unwell. Because I had been filming, I was strictly controlling my weight. That morning, I'd only had a slice of whole wheat bread and half a cup of milk, suspended high above the set. Dizziness overwhelmed me. Cold sweat kept pouring down, soaking my costume over and over. I asked for a break to use the restroom, but Steven rejected it flatly. Susie, come back to me, and I'll forgive everything that's happened. I could only weakly shake my head. Steven let out a cold laugh. Livid. Fine, hang up there. Then, Susie, you're gonna get yourself killed with that damn temper of yours. He stormed into the lounge. Zara followed behind him with smug satisfaction. A piercing buzzing began to fill my ears. It grew sharper and louder, my head pounding. At some point, white light flickered before my eyes, and everything went black. When I woke up again, I was lying in a hospital bed. I was already changed into soft, clean pajamas, and 4 needles inserted into the back of my hand. The air smelled of disinfectant, and faintly of that familiar sandalwood scent. I instinctively looked around, and sure enough, there was Theodore, asleep on the couch. Outside the window, it was already dark. A whole day had passed. I tried to sit up. Even the slightest movement stirred Theodore awake instantly. He rose and walked to my bedside in just a few steps. His fingers, warm and steady, touched my forehead. His voice was slightly rough from sleep. You're awake. How do you feel? Thirsty? Hungry? Water. Please, hang on. I'll get it. He quickly brought me warm honey water. He helped me drink more than half a cup, then gently helped me lie back down. Mr. Ning, the film set. I still had no idea what was going on. Knowing Steven, he wouldn't let this go easily. Don't worry. Theodore tucked me in. Steven has bigger problems to deal with right now. Susie, even though we haven't made our marriage public, you're still my wife. He looked at me, a trace of fatigue in his face. If someone tries to hurt you, do you really expect me to stand by and do nothing? I slowly lowered my gaze. I'm sorry, I've caused you trouble. To a man like Theodore. Even a pet dog under his name shouldn't be treated with disrespect, let alone a legally wedded wife. Rest first. There's no rush to get back to filming. Okay. He glanced at his watch. I've got an urgent matter abroad. I'll need to leave for a few days. The housekeeper will take care of you in the meantime. Go ahead. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine in a couple of days. Theodore tucked the blanket around me again, then leaned down to kiss me. I'll be back in a few days. If anything happens, don't try to handle it alone. Call me anytime. I will. He didn't say more. Soon, his secretary entered, packed up the laptop and documents on the desk, and the two of them left. He looked so tired. He must have heard what happened while working and rushed straight to the hospital to take care of me. The thought dazed me, followed by a wave of guilt and discomfort. I had wanted to draw a clear line with him, to avoid troubling him. Yet in the end, I still became a burden. Now, it was late at night, and he still had to catch a red-eye flight overseas. I couldn't help but feel ashamed, one way or another. He truly fulfilled the responsibilities of a husband. And me, what had I done for him? The day Theodore returned from his business trip, I had just wrapped up a major scene. I was playing a seductress who drunkenly attempted to assassinate the main villain. When the call came, I didn't even have time to remove my makeup. I threw on a coat and rushed out. My face was still painted in heavy, glamorous colors. I reeked of alcohol. As the car door opened, Theodore frowned. How much did you drink? It was for the scene. I just had a little. My steps were still a bit unsteady as I got in the car. Theodore reached out to steady me. Let's go home, he told the driver, and drive slowly. But even with caution, the slight bumps in the road made me nauseous. Theodore pulled me into his arms, my makeup smeared onto his shirt. Mr. Ning, I think I just ruined your clothes. Dusk was falling. The lights inside the car blurred softly. Theodore brushed back a lock of curled hair at my temple. What did you just call me? Mr. Ning, Susie, he said in that coaxing, low voice. Think carefully. What should you really be calling me? Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was his voice, so warm and seductive. Leaning in his arms, I closed my eyes and whispered, barely audible. Husband. Theodore leaned down and kissed me. Not like before, just a light, courteous touch on the brow, but deeper this time. Lingering, searching, until I melted into his embrace. Chapter 9. That night, Theodore didn't go to the other bedroom. When I came out of the shower, I was a little nervous. I pulled the silky comforter over myself, wrapping it tightly around my entire body. Yet beneath that cocoon of dark, private space, my eyes were wide open, fingers clenched tight. I didn't know what exactly I was nervous about, what I was expecting, or what I feared, until Theodore came out of the bathroom and stood by the window. Not afraid you'll suffocate like that? He lifted the blanket, and I squeezed my eyes shut in panic, my lashes trembling. I didn't dare look at him at all. Susie, but Theodore didn't make another move. If you're not ready, we'll wait. Theodore. I opened my eyes and looked at him. Have you ever been in love before? Yes, he answered without hesitation. So I was right after all. Just like I had chapters in my past I didn't want to revisit. How could a man like him, with his background, age, and experience, have a blank slate when it came to love? But even someone like him had once loved in vain? But that's all in the past now. You don't love her anymore? Theodore didn't answer. He leaned down and kissed me again. Do you want me to like someone else that badly? I shook my head in a panic. No. I thought, if there's someone you care about, Maybe it's better for me not to interfere too much in your life, but you're already my wife. His lips brushed my earlobe. Unless you don't plan on fulfilling your responsibilities as a wife. I didn't say that. Susie. Close your eyes. Okay. I obediently shut my eyes. Theodore's hand landed lightly at my waist. If anything feels uncomfortable, tell me. I had always assumed a man like Theodore, serious, career-focused, always composed, wouldn't care much for physical intimacy, but I never expected that the man who seemed so distant and self-disciplined in public could also be so indulgent and consuming in private. Theodore. I have 2 major scenes to film tomorrow. I was already worn out, but he didn't seem inclined to stop. All you ever think about is filming, he murmured in faint dissatisfaction. His movements deepened, unmistakably assertive. A soft cry escaped my lips. Ning, what did you just call me? His name dissolved before I could finish it. Shattered by his rhythm. In the end, my voice trembled as I whispered. Husband. Good girl. Say it again. Husband. Susie. Theodore lowered his head and kissed me deeply. From now on, always call me that. Got it? Got it. Husband. My eyes blurred with tears, trailing down the corners, tears that were kissed away softly. Even as I was undone by him completely. Chapter 10. Without Stephen. The entire filming process went unbelievably smoothly. Zara's acting was just terrible. By the end, nearly 2/3 of her so-called second female lead scenes had been cut by director Jean. Meanwhile, my supporting role had nearly as much screen time as the female lead. After the shoot wrapped, Theodore and I took a trip back to City C together. My parents had been worried ever since they heard I'd gotten married in City A, but all their anxiety and concerns vanished the moment they met Theodore. There was no question. A calm, dependable man like him was exactly the kind of son-in-law that parents adore, especially my mom. They say the more a mother-in-law looks at her son-in-law, the more she likes him, but my mom took that to the next level. She was so focused on Theodore. She practically forgot she even had a daughter. Theodore was incredibly thoughtful and respectful. He made up for everything. Engagement gifts, wedding tokens, traditional gold jewelry. It was enough to fill our entire living room. Even I hadn't expected him to prepare so thoroughly. He deposited a dowry of 100 million yuan into an account under my name. On top of that, he brought a symbolic 1,010,000 yuan in cash. But none of it mattered more than the one thing my parents wanted most: to see our marriage certificate with their own eyes. I knew this had been their biggest worry. After all, during my relationship with Stephen, even the status of girlfriend had been vague and hidden. We stayed at my parents' house for 3 days. Throughout those 3 days, Theodore did his utmost to spend quality time with them. He played chess and went fishing with my dad. And every day, he accompanied my mom to the market, even taking the dog out for walks with her. My mom was so proud of her new son-in-law. She practically wanted to broadcast it to the world. When someone asked her the price of potatoes that day, she beamed and said, "How did you know this is my son-in-law? Look at him, isn't he handsome as a movie star?" While walking the dog, if someone asked how old the pup was, she'd answer completely off topic. "My son-in-law's from City A. Not even 30 yet. Don't you think he's better looking than the actors on TV?" I laughed so hard I could barely stand. And somehow, Theodore still managed to keep his polite composure. Standing obediently beside my mom as a swarm of aunts and neighbors examined him from head to toe, commenting and sizing him up. Only when my mom was thoroughly satisfied would she take her precious son-in-law back home. When it was time to return to Hong Kong, my mom cried her eyes out. But Theodore was excellent at handling parents. A few gentle words, and he had her laughing again. He invited them to spend Lunar New Year with us in Hong Kong. Just like that, she forgot all about her sadness over our departure. Back in City A, I returned to set for more filming, thanks to director Jin's praise. My reputation steadily grew. Meanwhile, Stephen was completely caught up in his company's overseas business troubles. He didn't even have time to return to City A. My workload increased steadily. By the time director Jin's movie hit theaters, I had already filmed another movie, a TV drama, and even released 2 new singles. The film received great reviews, especially my morally ambiguous supporting character. It earned widespread acclaim from both critics and audiences. Privately, director Gene told me I had a strong chance of winning Best Actress for that role. He even invited me to star as the female lead in his next film. He insisted there was no one else better for the part. But right then, I suddenly collapsed in the recording studio and was rushed to the nearest hospital. I was pregnant, just 6 weeks along. Because of long-term dieting, my body wasn't in the best condition for pregnancy. The fainting spell had been triggered by hypoglycemia during the recording. But the moment I learned I was pregnant, my very first thought was, what will Theodore think? Chapter 11. Did he want this child? After all, he once had someone he really liked. We never talked about having children before we got married. I couldn't explain the nervousness in my heart, but there was a faint sliver of hope buried underneath it. When the door to the hospital room opened and Theodore walked in, his expression was unusually serious. My heart instantly sank. Theodore, Susie. He walked over to the bed and sat down, looking at me with a mix of sternness and concern. Your period didn't come on time, you really didn't notice? It's always been irregular, so I didn't think much of it. I mumbled, Theodore, I'm sorry. Did I cause you more trouble again? Sandra, my manager, had told me that right after I fainted. She'd called Theodore. He had been in a meeting but left immediately, even ran 3 red lights on the way to the hospital. That wasn't like him at all. No matter how serious things got at work, he was always composed and methodical. But now, I've warned you twice about the extreme dieting. You never listened. Being on camera adds 10 pounds. I didn't have a choice. I've already spoken to Su Fong. We're putting your work on hold. I don't want that. Theodore! We agreed I wouldn't quit the industry. I still want to work. I'm not saying you can't. Once you've safely delivered and your body's recovered, you can act, sing, whatever you want, but not now. Susie, you have to stop working for the time being. Do you really want this baby? Why would you think I wouldn't want our child? I lowered my head. The words circled in my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to say them aloud. I was afraid that one day, things between us would become like those cliches in novels. The woman he once loved would return, and he would leave me and the baby without hesitation. If that ever happened, maybe I could accept it, but I didn't want our child to get hurt because of it. Theodore, I've been thinking, if there was no baby, and you ever wanted to end this marriage, you could do so at any time, but with a child, it would be cruel, wouldn't it? Especially since you once had someone you loved. If she came back one day, she already came back. What? My eyes widened, stunned. So, she was back, and I hadn't heard a single word about it. He must have really cared about her, to keep her so well protected. We got married 8 months ago. Theodore looked at me directly. Susie, I'm not as impulsive or casual about marriage as you think. I was serious from the beginning. I just don't understand. Why me? Feelings can't always be explained. If you really want a reason, you can think of it as love at first sight. You liked me that early? Yes. When? When you and Steven had just started dating. How could you? You're thinking, how could I covet my nephew's girlfriend, right? Theodore gave a faint smile. I asked myself the same thing. But like I said, feelings are never simple or easy to define. But I want to make one thing clear. While you were still with Steven, I never crossed that line. It was only after you two broke up that I allowed myself to feel something. As he said this, a subtle smile deepened in his eyes. I just didn't expect. Before I could make a move, you came to me first. I thought of that awkward night. At the time, I had wanted to disappear from embarrassment. But now, there was only one thought in my mind. Some things were destined from the start. At 3.5 months pregnant, I won Best Actress for the first time in my life. Thanks to my role in director Jin's film, as I went on stage to accept the award. I was shocked to see Steven sitting in the front row of the VIP section, just like that night I sang on stage. When he hadn't even looked at me once, as if I were a stranger. But now, his gaze was locked on my face, undeniably. My dress that evening was loose-fitting, so my pregnancy bump wasn't visible. During the post-award interview segment, the host asked about my upcoming projects. I announced directly that I would be temporarily stepping away from the industry. The crowd buzzed instantly, murmuring in surprise. The host looked stunned. May we ask why? I gently patted the curve just under my gown and smiled. Warm and sweet. I'm in the early stages of pregnancy. My husband isn't comfortable with me continuing to work right now. At that moment, Stephen, who had been sitting quietly, abruptly stood up. His eyes were red, but I didn't look at him even once. After bowing and thanking everyone again, I walked off the stage with the trophy in hand. Theodore was still waiting for me. I handed the award to my assistant, lifted my skirt, and ran straight toward Theodore, not even waiting for my coat. Susie, stop running. He frowned, unable to hide the concern on his face. He walked faster than I did and met me halfway, pulling me tightly into his arms. Did you forget what the doctor said? You can't run like that. But I missed you. I tiptoed and kissed him lightly, brushing my fingers against his furrowed brow. Honey, don't frown. It makes you look so serious. It's scary. His brows slowly relaxed. He leaned down to meet my kiss. Tired? So tired. I want to go home. Okay, let's go home. He smiled gently, cupped my face, and kissed my forehead again. Let's go. Chapter 12. Stephen stood there in a daze, while the elegantly dressed Mrs. Lynn stared in shocked disbelief. When she saw Theodore turn around with his arm around me, her expression became impossible to describe. Theodore, you. How could you, with her? Mrs. Lynn's hands were trembling. She's just a lounge singer with that kind of background. Theodore, how could you? Even though it had all been in the past. Even though Stephen and I were long over. Hearing those words from Mrs. Lynn still made me feel utterly humiliated. Theodore pulled me into his arms and gently patted my back. A lounge singer? Have you forgotten that my grandmother studied music and performed on stage many times? His voice was soft, yet carried undeniable authority. Mrs. Lynn's face turned pale in an instant. Stephen seemed to finally snap out of it. Uncle, you and Susie. He gritted his teeth and spoke as if forcing the words out. Susie was my girlfriend. Uncle, aren't you afraid of the gossip this will cause? When exactly was she your girlfriend? Stephen, in those 2 years, did anyone in City A ever know about your relationship with her? But all my close friends knew. And what does that prove? You can't do this. Uncle, you can't take Susie from me just because you're older. If I remember correctly, Theodore interrupted. 3 months ago at the Ning family banquet, the patriarch formally stated that your mother is no longer considered the adopted daughter of the Ning family. So, what uncle are you referring to? Uncle, Mr. Ning, if you please, Theodore corrected calmly, and with that, he no longer looked at either of them. He simply turned with me in his arms and walked away. Stephen and Mrs. Lynn tried to speak again, but Theodore's bodyguard stepped forward and stopped them. Holding my hand, he led me to the car. Once we were inside, I couldn't hold back my curiosity. Why isn't Mrs. Lynn considered part of the Ning family anymore? The patriarch has been unhappy with her for a long time. Over the years, she used her status as an adopted daughter to do all sorts of shady things. But grandmother loved her very much, so the old man tolerated it until her remarks about you reached his ears. And he got angry because of that? Partly for grandmother's sake. The other part was because of you. Because of me? The first time you performed on stage after your debut, you sang Fishing Boat Song, grandmother's favorite piece. Theodore smiled and reached out to gently touch my cheek. Grandfather said your voice was lovely, reminded him a bit of grandmother's. Back then, he'd listened to your performance on repeat, so there was a connection I never knew about. No wonder. When Theodore brought me to the Ning estate, the elders were so kind and welcoming. I leaned against Theodore's chest as the car pulled away quietly, heading toward our home. His warm palm rested gently on my belly, stroking it softly. Half asleep, I murmured, Theodore, what do you like about me? A lot of things, too many to explain. It wasn't a romantic answer, but it still made my heart flutter sweetly. Love doesn't always have a reason. It's the same for me. If someone asked why I liked Theodore, I wouldn't be able to put it into words either. I just liked him, trusted him, wanted to see him be with him every moment, every day. I fell asleep in his arms, and somewhere in the haze of dreams, I felt his kiss land gently at my temple. Even in my sleep, the corners of my lips curled upward,